markets, economy, and small cap and mid cap section of the market. Krishna Sanghavi, CIO of Mahindra Manulife Mutual Fund, is here with us. Krishna, afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. First of all, I'd like to understand the point of impact of monsoon. There was nervousness. Now the monsoon onset has started. It's good news for the economy. You think it'll soothe a lot of nerves?
Yeah, clearly, monsoon remains a relevant variable for Indian economy. Cut it whichever way, the sheer demography, 140 crore people. Look at the industrial, growth, which again requires use of water, agriculture. I think look whichever way, we need a good monsoon, and that's been, the story of India. We do have occasionally some hiccups, some weak year, etc. But on an average, yeah, I think monsoon, has been kind to us over time. So to an extent, yes, it's important. Better to be watchful of, and as you clearly mentioned, beginning has been reasonably decent, though it's not in line with what has been the historical trend in June. But let's hope it will catch up with the long average for India.
Okay, the other narrative which is being discussed in section of the market is how the small cap, mid cap end of the market is done. In fact, if you pull up the index, the small cap index, we have seen a very sharp run up coming in from March lows. I want to understand with you, because you had also launched your small cap fund, around that bottom, that interim, the near term bottom, and the fund has done phenomenally well. What are your thoughts on the small cap, mid cap end of the basket in terms of valuations versus the quality of earnings they are posting?
Yeah, sure, Ajay. Yeah, you're right. We were actually we launched our small cap fund in the month of December 2020. So yeah, with the 6 months period and having sort small cap as a segment is done, always happy to have offer products at the right time to our customers for investing in small caps. If you look at small cap as a concept, small cap companies are basically those companies which are in a way a beneficiary of the economic growth, because that's a space where more fiscal growth is good, the nominal GDP growth is good. The small cap companies have a disproportionate share of profit growth. So the way we classify, this small cap is they are a beneficiary of economic growth, as well as they are a beneficiary, or at times, impacted by the monetary policy. And historical learning has been that the majority small cap companies happen to be a resource consumers, which means that they need access to slightly more quantum of money as well as a cheaper cost of money. That brings to a point that monetary policy of RBI does play a role in how some of these small cap companies end up performing well in their business, in their profitability, and by default on the equity markets from a investor sentiment and participation perspective. We have a case wherever the monetary policy is on a tightening mode, you have higher cost hurting the profitability. Whenever the monetary policy on a comfortable mode, the same small cap companies do gain because of A, the lower cost of interest, and B, the availability of money increases. So if you look at what's changed really in last 3 months, as from the time RBI gave us a pause in the month of April policy as well as June policy, we had a very nice run up in small cap on the expectations that we have a case where we're more or less at the peak of the interest rate cycle, and when the monetary policy starts turning more favorable, there'll be a profit growth, and naturally there is a overall economic case between how small cap companies participate in the economic growth.
Krishna, also, the last 3-4 months of SIP data, of flows data from the mutual fund side seems to be showing that this is the area of the market which is attracting most amount of flows. So clearly investor interest is high. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it will continue?
Investor interest has remained good on the small cap, as clearly shown in last maybe 6 month data flow on how small cap and mid cap as a segment are getting flows. I think broadly, if we listen then to this India core story of growth, what we have gone through in last maybe 10-15 years of economic growth, from 14th rank economy to maybe 6th rank economy, from 6th likely to become number 3. I think those ingredients are in place, and we'll see many small cap companies emerging in this, to participate on either a consumer side or the industrial side, take advantage of the growth. I think that flow from investor is in a way a reflection of the potential, which small cap companies do offer. As India grows faster, some of these companies can actually be bigger and far better than what they already.
How are you looking at, Krishna, beyond the market, the indicators of the economy in terms of inflation, growth, quality of earnings, capex, all of that?
Yeah, I think broad picture is in place. From whatever we hear and see, government is still very clearly focused on creating the capex for the next round of growth for India. And fortunately, capex is a very nice way to percolate the growth, because that's a space which actually gives employment to people at the point of creating capex, as well as later on, when the same capex cycle creates a factories which will end up, employing people. I think that piece is in place. That buzzword called PLI, which is allowing industry to get the capex cycle is in place. From an inflation perspective, yeah, we right now coming off from a year-on database which was pretty high on inflation front. So we have some comfort, and I think broad picture, yes, all the macros are in place for India. The only area where we're not really clear how the global economy will play out, and to an extent, that's where one has to, broadly either remember India on an average is a 3 to 4% higher GDP growth economy than the world. I think that macro is clearly for us. If world economy slows down slightly, our growth rate might taper off a bit. But again, that speed, that maintaining that gap of India versus the world is pretty much the the relevance for our economy.
Right, Krishna, for the next 12 to 24 months, do you see markets, and only for reference, I'm talking about the levels, higher positive returns 12 to 24 months or relatively flat?
Clearly, when we look at 2 months, would expect a higher levels of markets across the market cap segment, whether it's large cap, mid cap, small cap, on all the three fronts. There's nothing but in a way saying, economy is likely to grow. We still have a double-digit nominal GDP growth rate. Anything from 10 to 13 is a range which we've seen as a long-term average from India, and that translates into everything, economic growth and the corporate profits. I think that's pretty much the expectation, on a 2-year front.
Excellent. Krishna, we'll let you go on that one. Thanks so much for chatting with us today. Let's move on and talk about the important trigger which Krishna was also alluding to for the economy, and that is monsoon. It has already been a tumultuous start to the monsoon season in India, slightly late arrival.